In the ancient heart of the Persian Empire, where the winds of the east carried whispers of power and destiny, a monarch rose who would command the greatest realm the world had yet known. His name was Ahasuerus, remembered in history as Xerxes the Great, a king of kings, whose throne stood upon gold and whose word could shape the fate of nations. Yet his story, though etched in stone and scripture, has faded into the mists of time. The world remembers his wars, his glory, and his rage, but few recall the quieter storm that brewed in his palace. A story of pride, power, and providence hidden within the pages of the Bible. The empire stretched from India to Ethiopia, an expanse so vast that even the sun seemed to rise and set upon his command. In the citadel of Susa, Ahasuerus ruled from a palace of marble and lapis, its pillars carved with winged bulls and its walls painted in scenes of triumph. It was the golden age of Persia, an age of order and splendor, but also of fragile pride. The king, son of Darius the Great, inherited not just a throne, but a legacy: to expand, to dominate, to be more than mortal. Yet behind the jeweled crown, the weight of the empire pressed heavy upon him. Every feast, every decree, every gesture was more than ceremony. It was theater designed to remind the world who sat upon the throne of the world. In the 3rd year of his reign, he summoned the princes and nobles from across the empire, from the deserts of Arabia to the mountains of Media, to witness the glory of Persia. For 180 days, the court of Ahasuerus became the center of the world, overflowing with wine, silk, and gold. It was a spectacle of divine kingship, a display to convince his subjects that the power of their emperor was as unshakable as the stars above Persepolis, that even kings who claim to be gods find that power has limits. Amid the laughter and the music, a decision was made that would alter the course of his reign. When the final banquet came, the king, his heart full of wine and pride, called for Queen Vashti. She was his jewel, his empress, the woman whose beauty reflected the empire's perfection. But when the command reached her, Vashti refused. It was a defiance no Persian noble could comprehend, a queen denying the king before all his princes. In that single moment, the grandeur of the empire trembled. The court whispered, the nobles fumed, and Ahasuerus, humiliated before his kingdom, gave in to the fury that all despots fear, the fear of losing control. Vashti was cast aside, banished from the palace, her name struck from the royal record. Ahasuerus had preserved his pride, but in doing so, he had opened a void that power alone could not fill. In the quiet that followed, the court advisors spoke of finding a new queen, one worthy of the crown, one who would heal the wound left by Vashti's defiance. Across the empire, maidens were gathered from every province, their beauty measured against the impossible standard of royal favor. Among them was a young Jewish woman named Hadassah, known in Persia as Esther. She came not from wealth or noble lineage, but from a people living in exile, survivors of Jerusalem's fall. She was brought to the palace under the guardianship of her cousin Mordecai, a man of quiet faith and unyielding loyalty. When Esther entered the royal courts of Susa, the chroniclers say the king found something in her that no riches could offer: a calm strength, a grace that disarmed his restlessness. Ahasuerus, the ruler of 127 provinces, found peace in the presence of a woman whose name the empire barely knew. He placed the crown upon her head, declaring her queen of Persia. The banquets resumed, the palace sang again, and for a time, the king believed his order restored. But beneath the marble floors of Susa, a darker story was taking shape. In every empire, shadows gather where ambition thrives. Among Ahasuerus' advisors was Haman the Agagite, a man whose pride mirrored the king's, but whose heart held the venom of hatred. Elevated to the highest rank beneath the throne, Haman demanded homage from all who passed before him. When Mordecai, Esther's cousin, refused to bow, the insult grew into obsession. Haman's vengeance took form as a decree: the extermination of Mordecai's people. The Jews scattered yet bound by faith across Persia's lands. Ahasuerus, weary of politics and flattery, trusted Haman's words. The decree was sealed with the royal signet, irrevocable under Persian law. The fate of an entire people was sealed with a stroke of the king's hand, a decree born of manipulation and ignorance. As the scrolls were carried across the empire, from Susa to Babylon, from Egypt to Media, the Jews wept in despair. In the palace, Mordecai tore his garments, and Esther, now queen, faced the most perilous choice of her life. The laws of Persia forbade any person, even the queen, from approaching the king uninvited. To do so was to risk death unless the golden scepter was extended in mercy. Yet Esther, driven by courage and faith, resolved to act. "If I perish, I perish," she whispered, as she entered the throne room unbidden. When Ahasuerus saw her standing there, his heart softened. The scepter rose, and her life was spared. The king, unaware of the full storm before him, asked what she desired. She invited him and Haman to a feast, a subtle move, a trap woven with patience. At the first banquet, the air was tense, heavy with the scent of intrigue. Haman's pride swelled, believed himself favored by the queen. Yet behind Esther's calm eyes, the plan unfolded. At the second feast, when the wine was poured and the silence deepened, Esther spoke. She revealed her true heritage, declaring herself a daughter of the people marked for death. "We are sold to destruction," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Our enemy is this wicked Haman." The king, stunned, turned upon his advisor. The man he had trusted now stood exposed as a serpent within his court. Rage overcame him, the same fury that once banished Vashti, but this time it was justice, not pride, that guided his hand. Haman was executed upon the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The decree of death still hung over the empire, for Persian law could not be undone. Yet Ahasuerus, moved by Esther's courage, gave her and Mordecai authority to write a new edict, one that allowed the Jews to defend themselves. Across the empire, the tables turned. On the day appointed for their destruction, the people of God rose to victory. The fear that once bound them was broken, and the Feast of Purim was born, a celebration that endures to this day, not of vengeance, but of deliverance. History would later remember Ahasuerus as Xerxes, the emperor who crossed into Greece and met defiance at Thermopylae, whose armies were vast, yet undone by hubris. To the Greeks, he was the face of tyranny. To the Persians, a god king. To the Hebrews, a vessel of divine providence. His reign stands at the crossroads of history and myth, where human power meets the quiet, unseen hand of destiny. In the halls of Susa, the stones still whisper his name. The empire he ruled has long turned to dust, its palaces swallowed by sand and time. Yet the story of Ahasuerus endures, not as the tale of a conqueror, but as a mirror reflecting the fragility of power and the mystery of purpose. For even the mightiest of kings can become instruments in a plan far greater than their own. And in the forgotten corners of Scripture, the voice of this ancient emperor still echoes, a reminder that history remembers not only those who conquer, but those who are changed by the unseen hand of fate. As the story fades into the twilight of empire, we are left with a question whispered through time. Was Ahasuerus the master of his destiny, or merely a witness to the will of something greater? His crown has crumbled, his monuments fallen, yet his story remains a thread woven through history's tapestry, shimmering with the paradox of power and the mystery of providence. And perhaps, in remembering the forgotten emperor of the Bible, we glimpse a truth that has endured through every age, that empires rise and fall. But the stories that reveal the soul of their kings never truly fade.